In this video, I'm going to be giving you my top 10 tips for sheetrocking. After taking some time away for another project, I'm back to my office remodel. The next step in redoing my office is to do all the framing and the sheetrocking. And because it's kind of boring to just watch a video of somebody framing and sheetrocking, I thought that a much better idea would be to give you my top 10 tips for sheetrocking. Tip number 1. When cutting holes in sheetrock for electrical or for other purposes, make them big. It may seem counterintuitive, but bigger holes are much easier to patch than smaller ones. This is because you can span between two studs or joists, which will make it much easier to repair. Plus, bigger holes give you more room to work with when you're doing wiring or other things inside the walls. Really, the amount of mudding and sanding that you'll do will be about the same. Tip number 2, always tape your joints. This will make it much easier to fill them as the tape adds structure, and without it, the mud has a tendency to crack or not fill completely. Along with that, always use mesh tape. It may be more expensive, but to do the other kind of tape right, there are a lot of extra steps like soaking it, which can take up more time. Plus, I've seen it fail after a few years, especially in parts of the country that are more humid. Tip number 3. For bigger holes, you may need more than just tape. There are a lot of methods for patching larger holes in walls, but I've discovered these tape-on patches. While they may cost a bit more, they definitely make the job easier and take less time. Tip number 4, always use pre-mixed joint compound, or mud. It's easier to do for the DIYer because you don't have to take the extra step of mixing in water with powder and making sure that you have the right consistency. Tip number 5, feathering. This is a technique where you even out the mud using larger and larger knives. It eliminates edges and makes the wall look uniform. Don't be afraid to use mud liberally at first and to spread out your feathering. That'll make it much easier to make it look uniform, and you're going to have to paint the whole wall anyway. Tip number 6, apply additional coats. Anytime you're using mud to fill a hole, it will shrink as it dries. The bigger the hole, the more it will shrink. If you want walls that are perfectly smooth, you'll need to sand and apply additional coats until the hole is filled. Tip number 7. Don't worry if you spill a bit of mud on the carpet when you're doing your mudding job. It will come right out, but avoid cleaning it up right away if you can. Let it dry in a day or two and it'll clump off. For anything that's left, just scratch it to dust and vacuum up any residue. If you do try to clean it off too soon, it makes it much more difficult to get ultimately. Tip number 8. If you happen to spill on a hard surface, it is best to wipe it up right away and not wait. If it does dry, it is a little bit more difficult to get it off, but all you need to do is just get after it with a warm, damp rag, rub it a bit, and it'll come right off. Tip number 9. Make sure that before you start sanding, you move everything out or cover anything that you don't want to get dusty. Mudding and sanding is probably the messiest job that any DIYer can do, and you tend to do it a lot when you do big projects like this. It is also a good idea to cover hallways or vents while sanding to try to keep the dust contained. Tip number 10, sand your little heart out. Start with heavier grits of sandpaper and move down to finer paper as you get close to finishing. You'll have to do a few coats of mud and you'll have to do a lot of sanding before the wall gets to be perfect. Also make sure that you always wear safety gear. I hope that these tips were useful for you and there's something that you can use in your next DIY project. If you like this video, be sure to give me the thumbs up. Please also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already to get more great videos like this. I have a lot more projects coming up, a lot more ideas, and I'll be putting up new videos all the time. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a great day.